Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our City Council meeting of July 6th, 2022. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask our clerk to please read the roll.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Heldeshelt.
Here.
Councilmember Albert.
Here.
Councilmember Mendoza.
Here.
Councilmember Rakucci.
Here.
And Mayor Bernasconi.
Here, thank you. I'd like to ask Wayne Wiley from our Economic Development team if he would please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Carmen, can you please announce the meeting procedures this evening?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the July 6th City of Roseville City Council meeting. If you're present tonight and have not already picked up an agenda, feel free to do so here at the end of the table to my left. As a reminder, the Brown Act does prohibit the City Council from taking actions on items not listed on tonight's agenda. And speakers wishing to address the City Council may do so by stepping up to the podium. Each speaker will have 3 minutes during public comment on non-agenda matters. The maximum time for such comments is 25 minutes total. Speakers that would like to address the City Council on agenda items listed on tonight's agenda will have up to 5 minutes to share their comments. Time will be monitored, and so when the red light blinks at the podium, the speaker will have to begin concluding their comments. Lastly, if you address the City Council tonight, please consider stating your name for the record. With that, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you. This evening we have a proclamation and a resolution. And I have asked if our Vice Mayor would present the proclamation for Parks and Recreation Month for July 2022.
Joe Geller, will you join me at the podium?
Gladly.
Thank you, Mayor. This is really a treat and a delight to present this proclamation recognizing Parks and Recreation Month. Seems like just a week ago, because it probably was, that a number of us, the mayor playing bocce ball and a number of us celebrating our parks, the opening of our 80th, the recognition of our 80th park. And in addition to it, to meet the council's goals and objectives, the revitalization of the Buljan playground. And on our consent agenda tonight are a number of other parks and recreation aspects. So without further ado, I want to, say on behalf of the mayor and my colleagues, parks and recs are an integral part of communities throughout this country, including the city of Roseville. The city parks, recs, recreation, and libraries, let's not forget libraries, enhances lives in the community by providing exceptional experiences. And whereas the Parks and Recreation commit to being the leader in creating healthy communities through progressive, sustainable, and memorable experiences. And whereas Parks and Rec strengthen community identity by providing facilities and services that reflect and celebrate community character, heritage, culture, history, aesthetics, and landscape. And whereas Parks and Rec promote being active, eating healthy, feeling renewed through organized and self-directed fitness, play activity, and nutrition education. And whereas our park and natural recreations ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and recreate outdoors. And whereas parks and natural recreation, that's a tough word, PRL, can I just do PRL for the rest of the way? Improve water quality, protect groundwater, prevent flooding, improve the quality of the air we breathe, provide vegetative buffers to development and produce habitat for wildlife. And whereas parks and recreation programs increase a community's economic prosperity through increased property values, expansion of the local tax base, increased tourism, lawn fields, the attraction and retention of businesses, and crime reduction. And this is the important part, whereas in 1985, since 1985, America celebrated July as the nation's official Parks and Recreation Month. And in 2009, the U.S. House of Representatives officially mandated July as Parks and Recreation. On behalf of the mayor and my colleagues, I declare July 2022 as Parks and Recreation Month and urge all residents to use and enjoy the city's parks, trails, open spaces, and facilities. And they're nationally recognized parks and recreation. Could you talk a little bit about that? And then
Absolutely.
the Parks and Rec Challenge for the month of July.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you very much, Mayor Bernasconi, Vice Mayor Haudashelt, council members, for this great recognition for Parks and Recreation Month. I'm so proud to be a park and recreation professional, and I just firmly believe in the benefits of Parks and Rec. They are so many. Vice Mayor Haudashelt talked about a lot, and there are a lot, and even more than that. You know, we do promote health and wellness. We improve air and water quality. We improve the quality of life, and we have such a dedicated staff that's dedicated to enhancing the lives of our residents. So I have to take this moment to recognize them as well. And yes, we did just dedicate our 80th park in June, and our 81st is coming in July, or actually August, sorry. Our 81st is coming in August. So there's a lot of great things happening in Roseville in the areas of parks, recreation, and libraries. And we do have a challenge for our residents during the month of July, and that is to visit at least 10 parks, programs, facilities, libraries, for the opportunity to win some fun prizes. So visit the city's website, the Parks and Recreation page, to learn a little bit more about that. And I will take a moment to talk about our national recognition. In the field of Parks and Recreation, our pinnacle is called the National Gold Medal. I like to say it's like our World Series or our Super Bowl. And very proud that this year the American Academy for Park and Recreation Administration and the National Recreation and Park Association has recognized Roseville Parks and Recreation is one of the top 4 agencies in the nation in our population category, and that's for populations from 75,000 to 150,000. And so we will be a big deal at the national conference in September, where the recipient will be announced. But even being among the top 4 park recreation agencies in the country is a great recognition that we're very proud to provide this community. So thank you again for your ongoing support. Thank you to our residents for their patronage and their support of all we do, and happy National Park and Recreation Month.
And Madam Mayor, if I could, so tomorrow night you have a webinar on universal accessibility of parks?
Yes,
Is that right?
it's actually a public workshop in person at Maidu Community Center. We will be building a new all-inclusive playground in the coming year, and we want to get the public's input on that. So at 6 o'clock at Maidu Community Center, if you're interested in providing input for our all-inclusive playground, please come and join us.
Jill, is it going to be, we have one at Maidu, is it going to be, and we have one at Mahaney. Is this another place or a rehab or?
Yes, this will be in West Roseville.
Okay.
And we do have an all-inclusive playground at Mahaney and one at Maidu.
Right.
And so this one will be even different than those to provide people of all abilities opportunities throughout the city to visit those playgrounds.
Oh, sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Jill, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, the next item is 5.2. We have someone who wanted to retire from the city after many years of service. Can you imagine that? So,
We allow that?
Mike Dewar, would you meet Councilmember Scott Albert at the podium, please?
Well, this one's kind of a bummer for us. Anybody that uses our bike trails in the city, you are very aware of how fantastic our trails are. And every year it seems like we're connecting more and more trails for people to ride throughout our city and connect to other cities. And this gentleman has a lot to do with that. And he's chosen to retire, so we're going to celebrate in sadness here. Anyway, I was wondering if you guys could help me with this, because, you know, the whereases get kind of boring. Would you help me with the whereas part? Okay, ready? Whereas. Mike Dewar began his distinguished career with the city in July of 1996 as a planner, and whereas. In October of 2001, Mike was promoted to the project planner, where he contributed to the Kaiser Hospital development, and whereas. In November of 2004, Mike was promoted to the Alternative Transportation Analyst/Bikeway Planner, where he updated city standards to include wider bike lanes, led the development of numerous bike trails in the city, including the Antelope Creek Bike Trail, Drake Creek Greenway Trail, Foothills Tennis Village Bike Path, and the Downtown Bridges, and developed the Trail Maintenance Committee to preserve Roseville's trails and
Whereas.
Mike promoted to alternative transportation manager in 2016, and Mike understood the value and challenges of transit and had a vision of how to make them better to meet the needs of the community, such as converting the city's bus fleet to zero-emissions battery electric buses, including the installation of the needed charging infrastructure, and found numerous grants to make it happen. And Mike's historical knowledge of city policies and background is an invaluable asset to those that work with him. And Mike has proven himself as an expert in the planning process, bikeway development, and the transit services. And Mike, as an avid bicyclist, Mike has been a catalyst for the city's annual Bike Fest, which provides free helmets and safety information to people of all ages. And Mike has helped the city achieve and maintain national recognition as a bicycle-friendly community since 2008. And Mike received a 2022 Pride of Roseville Distinguished Service Award celebrating over 25 years with the city of Roseville. And that was the last one. Mike is retiring after 26 years of honorable service to the citizens of Roseville. And he'll be greatly missed and remembered by all his friends and coworkers, and most of all, the city's Alternative Transportation Division and the Public Works Director. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Council of the City of Roseville, California, that Mike Dewar be commended for his 26 years of outstanding service and dedication to the City of Roseville, congratulated for his many accomplishments, and wished a long, healthy, and enjoyable retirement. Thank you so much for your service.
Thank you, Councilmember Alvord, Mayor Bernasconi, and Council. I thought it would never end. I'm talking about the whereases. Anyways, I'll just be brief. I just want to say that, it's been my pleasure to work with a fantastic group of employees over the years, many of whom are here, but many have either retired in the past or gone on to other jobs. But we have a great group of employees. And being part of that team has really been a great pleasure and led to many of these successes, because all of what you heard was done with a team, not just me. But thank you. And then I would just also say we've always, in Roseville, I think fairly unique for a city, always had consistent vision for our future and great leadership. And so I think that's made all of our successes, or helped with all of our successes to make Roseville a great place to live, work, and play. So thanks again.
Thank you very much,
Thank
Mike.
you.
All the best to you.
Don't forget your resolution.
Thanks.
We will move on to public comment. Now is the time for anyone to come forward to address the council on any item that's not on the agenda. Is there anyone here tonight that would like to do that? They can come forward now. You don't have any yellow cards, right? Okay. Anyone?
Somebody.
I'm just grabbing stuff.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's no one here for public comment, we'll do a public comment also at the end of our meeting. So I'll close public comment, and we'll move on to the consent calendar and ask our clerk to please read the procedures for approving the consent calendar.
Thank you. All matters on consent tonight are considered routine in nature and will be passed by one motion. There will be no discussion on consent calendar items unless a member of the City Council, the staff, and/or the public requests that an item be pulled for further discussion. At this time, neither council nor staff has made such request. Is there any member of the public that would
I have.
have a request?
One
Oh,
item.
I'm so sorry.
We requested that item 7.9 be pulled from consent,
Okay, thank you.
and the other one will come later,
Perfect. Thank you so very much.
before the off-consent item.
Anyone else? Okay, anyone in the public that would like to pull an item? With that, Madam Mayor, we do have items 7.1 through 7.8, and then item number 7.10 through 7.26 on consent. You said 7.9 will be pulled, and is that the only item that's going to be pulled off consent, 7.9? Perfect. With that, if I can get a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have Vice Mayor Haldeshell making a motion with a second by Councilmember Mendoza. With that, we'll do roll call, starting off with Vice Mayor Haldeshell.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Alvord?
Yes.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci? And Mayor Bernasconi?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 7.9. So item number 7.9 is the Warren Placer Waste Management Authority Agreement Amendment.
Maybe I could say why I pulled it off. This is West Placer Waste Management Authority Agreement Amendment. I just sought an opportunity for Mr. Plecker to talk about it a little bit, that this is the agency authority is going to be going for going for a bond rating on repairing and enhancing the facility, and this is an opportunity to have a better bond rating for West Placer Waste Management Authority, and a possibility could help reduce financing rates, would ultimately keep our tipping fees lower for the entire region and for the city of Roseville. But that's kind of what I want to pull it off for.
Makes my job very easy. I almost dodged a bullet there for a moment.
Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. I'm Rich Plecker. I'm your Environmental Utilities Director. As Council Member Rakucci just mentioned, the amendment before you this evening, and I won't drag you back to the dark days of April when we last talked about a flow control agreement with Western Placer, or the authority as we call it. In that agreement, we essentially pledged to send about a third, give or take, of our tonnage to the facility. That was reached after some long and painful negotiations. At this time, we're bringing forward an amendment which essentially pledges all of our waste flow for a period of 3 years. If you recall, we'd mentioned during our prior discussion that Roseville really won't be in a position with respect to its own facilities to really entertain any other sort of operations other than what we're doing right now. So this amendment will, we believe, or at least authority staff tells us, that it will help the authority financially, should help them achieve a better bond rating and thus reduce interest costs going into the future. And for that reason, we're glad to recommend it on that particular basis. So at the end of 3 years, this particular amendment will lapse. It will go back to the old original agreement, and we will be free to do what we what we promised to do in that earlier agreement. So hopefully that helps sort of summarize what's going on. We believe that this is it's a good move for the city, since we really don't have any other options in the short term, something that we've known full well. It's ironic, this is actually an alternative that we had tried to negotiate earlier on with the authority, and it was rejected, but now it's, I think, seen a little bit differently, that it's a better deal. So we're happy to recommend it, and happy to answer any questions, any other additional questions you might have.
Other questions of the council? No, I'll just say that we appreciate your representation on that board, Pauline.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Working with staff. Okay.
Maybe you go ahead and do the motion. So the motion before
You're going to open it, sorry,
public comment.
public comment.
Thank you. Thank you. Keep us all honest up here. Is there anyone here who would like to address this item or speak to this item? Okay, I'll close public comment. Thank you for the reminder, Joe.
With that, the City Council will consider adopting Resolution Number 22-265. That's approving a First Amendment to agreement for delivery of solid waste between Western Placer Waste Management Authority and the City of Roseville, and authorizing the city manager to execute it on behalf of the City of Roseville. If I can get a motion, please.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor by Councilmember Rakucci with a second by Councilmember Haldeshelt. With that, we'll start roll call with Vice Mayor Haldeshelt.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Albert?
Yes.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci?
Yes.
And Mayor Bernasconi.
Yes.
Thank you. This item passes unanimously.
Okay, we'll move into item 8.1, Board and Commission's biannual vacancies. This one yours?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor. Regarding this item, 8.1, Board and Commission's biannual vacancies, the appointment of the 2 vacancies for the Economic Development Advisory Committee are being removed from the agenda this evening at the request of staff to be placed on a later agenda in August. The other appointments for the Grants Advisory Committee and the Planning Commission will proceed as planned. With that, we'll jump right into the Grants Advisory appointments.
I'm going to recuse myself from this particular vote because one of the applicants is a past client of mine.
Okay. Thank you. The record will reflect that Councilmember Alvord will be recusing himself and removing himself from the dais in the room on the discussion on item 8.1, the portion pertaining to the Grants Advisory Commission. Please cast your votes and ballots and send them over my way, please.
Just a point of clarification, Mr. Speaker. Is there an opportunity for anyone who is an applicant for this to address the council?
So
Is that a normal procedure?
it could be a normal procedure if the council believes that that discussion would be pertinent for purposes of how you want to vote. It's not necessary for purposes of the vote.
That's fine.
Yeah.
We vote.
Thank you. Thank you. So we have, again, this is for the Grant Advisory Commission, 2 appointments. We do have, we have Councilmember Haldeshelt voting for Ms. Nina Acosta and Ed Kritz. Next, we have Mayor Bernasconi voting for Nina Acosta and Casey Mills. Councilmember Mendoza voting for Nina Acosta and Ed Kritz. And and Councilmember Rakucci voting for Nina Acosta and Ed Kritz. And so the record again will reflect that Councilmember Alvord did not participate. We do have a total of 4 votes for Nina Acosta, 3 votes for Ed Kritz, 1 vote for Casey Mills, and 0 for John Vertudo. With that, Nina Acosta, receiving 4 votes, will be appointed to the Grants Advisory Commission, as well as Ed Kritz, with 3 votes, will be appointed to the Grants Advisory Commission. Congratulations to both of you.
So, Madam Clerk, I'll leave it to you. In the past, the vote tally, and then we've taken a motion to confirm the vote tally. So it's a way to basically memorialize that decision. So I'll leave that to you if you think procedurally that would be done. That would be consistent with how we've done it in the past.
That's fine. I'll do that. I was going to do it at the end.
Oh, okay.
For both, but that's fine. Can I get a motion to approve Ms. Nina Acosta and Mr. Ed Kritz as the 2 appointees for the Grant Advisory Commission, please?
So moved.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor by Councilmember Rakucci with a second by Councilmember Mendoza. With that, we'll do a roll call. Vice Mayor Haldeshelt?
Yes.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci?
Yes.
And Mayor Bernasconi?
Yes.
And again, the record will reflect that Councilmember Alvord did not participate on the vote or did discussion on this matter.
We'll go retrieve it from the...
Thank you. Great. So before you have the green sheet for the Planning Commission. If you will please take the opportunity to cast your votes and send me your ballots.
Vote for 3.
Thank you.
Dimple Jed.
Okay, thank you. So we do have 4 individuals who applied for the Planning Commission. We have Mr. Eric Brashears, Nancy Grenzer, Rob Jensen, and Andre Randolph. We do have the ballots here. So with that, we'll start off with Councilmember Alvord supporting Eric Brashear and Rob Jensen and Andrea Randolph. So Eric, Rob, and Andrea. Okay, next we have Vice Mayor Haldeshelt supporting Eric Brashear, Rob Jensen, and Andrea Randolph. I'm sorry, Andrea, I apologize. Next, we have Councilmember Mendoza supporting Eric Brashear. I'm hoping I'm saying these names right, and I do apologize. Brashears. Nancy Glenser and Rob Jensen. Next, we have Councilmember Rakucci supporting Eric Brashear, Rob Jensen, and Andre Randolph. And lastly, Mayor Bernasconi supporting Eric Brashear, Rob Jensen, and Andre Randolph. Okay, with that, our highest vote getter is Mr. Eric Brashear with 5 votes. Second, we have Mr. Rob Jensen with 4 votes, and Andre Randolph with 4 votes as well. I'm sorry.
Rob had 5.
Oh, Rob, I'm sorry, he did have 5. I do apologize. Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you. So with that, we still have Eric Brashear, Rob Jensen, and Andre Randolph, who were the 3 highest vote getters. And so with that, if I can get a motion to appoint all 3 to the Planning Commission.
Do we need to open it up to public comment now?
You know, I realize we didn't do that for the last vote. I don't think we typically open for public comment for purposes. The council is taking action, but you can open it for public comment, but I'm realizing now that we didn't open it for the last vote. Not that it invalidates the vote, but if you do want to open for public comment for both, you can do that at this time.
Just to be safe, is there anyone here tonight that would like to comment on either of the items that we have just voted on, the vacancies and the appointments? Okay, I'll close public comment. Thank you.
Yes, if I can get a motion to appoint all 3.
I'll move to appoint Rob Jensen, Eric Brashear, and Andre Rudolph to the Planning Commission.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor by Vice Mayor Haldeshelt with a second by Councilmember Elverd. With that, we'll start our roll call with Vice Mayor Haldeshelt.
Yes.
Councilmember Elverd.
Yes.
Councilmember Mendoza.
Yes.
And Councilmember Rakucci.
Yes.
And Mayor Bernasconi.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you to all.
Congratulations.
Thank you to all who applied as well. All right, we'll move on to item 9.1, the Housing Element Implementation Land Use Policy. Our planning team here. Good evening.
Good evening, council members. Nice to see you all. I'm Mike Eisner, Development Services Director. With me is Greg Bitter, Planning Manager, and Lauren Hawker, Senior Planner. This item requests approval of a land use policy that we spoke to you about ad nauseum during the housing element review and ultimate adoption last fall. This is part of Program 14. It's part of the Adequate Sites Rezone Program. And the purpose of the policy is to achieve the city's lower income RHNA obligations. So Lauren's going to make the presentation this evening. I'll hand it over to her.
Good evening, members of the City Council. My name is Lauren Hawker, Senior Planner with the City of Roseville, and I am here, as Mike indicated, to talk about this proposed land use policy called Guidelines for Specific Plan Amendments Affecting or Proposing Residential Land Use. So some background on this. Mike did go into this a bit, but so the policy before you tonight implements a program of the housing element. The city's housing element was adopted about a year ago in August of 2021. And as you've heard us talk about a number of times now, we had to do an adequate sites analysis where we looked at all the vacant land in the city and determined whether or not we had enough capacity to accommodate all the units assigned to us from the state, and found we had a lower income deficit of 1,791 units. Because we had a deficit, we had to establish a rezone program to make up that shortfall. It's really important that we all remember, though, that when we talk in housing element terms about lower income capacity, we're really talking about high density residential land, because density is used as a proxy to determine affordability for these purposes. So our rezone program has 4 strategies, and I do want to briefly cover all of them because it's important as we move forward with this implementation that we recognize the rezone program is a multi-pronged approach. And it's intended not to unduly burden only one stakeholder group or one area of the city, but to spread this out evenly. So one of the strategies is the commercial corridors or corridor plans project that we're taking through the public process right now. I would like to emphasize that project was something council was interested in actually before the housing element process started. But since it was a program we knew we were going to be moving on that involved housing units, we folded it in as part of this rezone program. The corridors assumed in the housing element about 400 units of additional high-density capacity. Because of specific interest from a property owner in Douglas Sunrise, that increased to 850 units. The other strategy is infill intensification. That targets sites in the infill area already zoned for multifamily housing or already designated for high-density residential housing, and would do a land use amendment process to increase the development potential on those sites, because the land use designations on those were all based on as-built conditions and not based on like capacity or potential conditions. Then we have the opportunity site strategy, which is basically looking around the city at non-residential land that could be converted to residential land that's at high-density residential capacity. That strategy we were looking at could accommodate maybe 600 units. So that brings us to the policy before you tonight, which is our land use policy. So the proposed policy would apply to specific plan amendment projects. So if somebody wants to apply to us to amend a specific plan, and it would apply if they are amending non-residential land to residential land, or if it's a residential specific plan amendment involving 10 or more acres. It would require that an applicant increase the density of any high-density residential land owned or controlled by the applicant within the specific plan being amended. Now, there are two tiers, as shown on the slide here, for that increase. The first tier is if the existing property is 13 to 22 units per acre. The policy would require that be increased to at least 25 units per acre. If it's 23 to 29, then it would be increased by 10%, or to at least HDR 30. 30 is basically the cap. You don't have to increase it beyond 30 units per acre. Now, the reason for the split is based on housing element law. And what that does is it establishes a default density of 25 units to the acre. Any site at 25 units to the acre or greater gets to be counted as lower income capacity. So what the policy does is says 13 to 22 units per acre, increase it to the default density of 25. If it's 23 units to the acre, then a 10% increase reaches 25 units to the acre. So the policy basically ensures that all of these properties reach the default density. Next slide. So, public outreach and the Planning Commission. We did a fair amount of outreach on this, starting with the draft policy language is included as part of the housing element adoption process. But subsequent to that, we did further outreach with the Building Industry Association and with major landholders who would be most likely to be affected by this policy. And as a result of that outreach, we did make some changes in between the draft policy language in the housing element and the policy language before you tonight. The major changes are included on this slide for you, but one of them is that it specifically states that these changes would not result in new or increased population-based requirements, like more parkland dedication. It also does not apply to applications submitted prior to adoption of this policy. So if you have an in-process application, this policy does not apply. And finally, I emphasized this earlier, but it does not apply to any high-density residential land outside of the specific plan being amended that the applicant owns or controls. So finally, as we discussed, this policy is just one strategy among four, and it's entirely possible that other strategies could be more effective or that over time we will get enough. And so we didn't want the policy to just live on forever. So there's basically a sunset clause in there that indicates that once we have enough capacity, this policy no longer applies. So at Planning Commission, a planning commissioner expressed some concern about whether higher densities could feasibly be built, especially as we're talking about 30 units to the acre, and whether or not the BIA was likewise concerned. And the answer is yes. The BIA was concerned about that and is not supportive of this policy because, of course, none of us particularly, we planned all these specific plans at the densities we've planned for. We're not enthusiastic about moving forward with this, but we recognize that this is a necessary implementation of the housing element, and so the BIA is not opposing the policy. So the motion to recommend approval was unanimous and no public comments were received. So in conclusion, the policy is implementing a program of the city's adopted housing element, and Planning Commission recommends City Council adopt the resolution approving the policy document guidelines for specific plan amendments affecting or proposing residential land use. That concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions you may have at this time.
Lauren, thank you so much. Does the council have any questions for staff? You want to start us off?
Yeah, I just want to get clear on the specific, if a specific plan is amended and it's more than 10 acres, this automatically applies to it? This will automatically go into effect? Wasn't quite clear on the wording on that.
So yeah, if you apply for a specific plan amendment and there are 10 or more acres of residential land involved, so you want to take it from a 10-acre low-density residential piece and you want to modify that, then the policy would apply.
But not for the whole specific plan, just for the area you want to modify?
Yeah, just for any land that applicant of that proposal owns or controls. It doesn't apply to every HDR site in the specific plan, if that's what you're asking.
So it's only the pieces they choose to modify. If it's more than 10 acres, then this is going to apply to it. Saying that right?
If an applicant owns high-density land and they're modifying any other 10 acres of any other land, then that high-density land, even if it's not subject to the application, their original intent, we would ask that parcel be the density increased to the 25 or 30.
So if they modify the specific plan at all, anywhere in the specific plan, then those pieces would automatically get upgraded?
Yeah, 10 or more acres, if they're doing that, then yes.
Okay.
That would become part of their application.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I thought I understood the answer until, so I own 11 acres in a specific plan.
Yes.
I have not submitted an application, and I have high-density residential. This would apply to me.
No. It is so applicant there. It's not uncommon for applicants to own land that have varying land use designations. So, we'll use Sierra Vista, as an example. 9 major original landowners. They all had, or not all, but several of them had low-density land, medium-density land, high-density land, and commercial land. And we routinely bring, they're not here to make fun of, but JMC for their land use amendments. We had one a month ago. And so using JMC as the example, if they came in again in Sierra Vista and wanted to amend the land use designation or the specific plan on 10 or more acres of anything, commercial, any land use, and they owned and controlled a high-density site that didn't meet those minimum densities,
right,
we would ask them to increase the unit count on that land,
right,
so that they met the minimum densities. But they would not be required to change the land use or change the density on land owned by West Park or land owned by any other property owner.
And if they don't apply for a specific plan amendment, then they can build that at the density it's currently designated.
Correct.
Got it. I'm not going to confuse myself anymore.
I'm sorry, Polly. I just have a quick question. So these don't have to be contiguous. If you have 10 acres over here, another 20 acres over here, as long as they control a high density, so it doesn't matter. It would trigger that, right?
But it has to be in that same specific plan.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
And it doesn't affect their other commercial, if they didn't have a high density and they wanted to do something with their commercial or something, that doesn't trigger anything.
Right.
Yeah, this policy wouldn't apply. Our normal non-residential conversion policy would apply.
Okay.
But not this policy.
Okay, and then it does not apply to high density outside of the specific plan being amended. So someone could have high density apartments that are less than that, and they're not triggered.
Several of the, using Sierra Vista as the example, several of those landowners have land holdings outside of the Sierra Vista specific plan. And when we initially proposed this policy, it was any high-density property owned by one of those, if they initiated a specific plan amendment, any high-density property that they owned would be subject to the policy. That had obvious concern from the building industry, and so we revised the policy in response to that concern. So it's only high-density land within the specific plan that they're proposing to amend, not everywhere else, if that makes sense.
No, it does, because sometimes residents in the area see an apartment, they're okay, but they don't want it to be super high density or affordable, or, they just want to understand it more. Thank you.
You have a question?
I'm sorry, I have a follow-up then. Sometimes when developers will change the numbers, we have to keep like the equal amount of numbers, so if they shuffle things around a little bit. So if this raises the count, can they lower the count somewhere else, or is it now going to be just a raised count overall?
It would be a raised count overall, but part of the housing element, we evaluated all of that. So we did an addendum to the general plan, EIR, and et cetera, so that the developers wouldn't be on the hook for additional CEQA because of that.
Okay. So they couldn't, like, if automatically increase, say, by 5 high-density units. They couldn't add somewhere else in single family or the low
I don't know
density.
that they couldn't.
Well, I think anytime an applicant came forward and they wanted to increase the density on any of their land use designations, we would consider it. What would be required, obviously, in the specific plans, because they're all balanced with the infrastructure costs, capacity, finance plans, we'd have to run them through a specific plan, fiscal impact analysis. But we would support. I think most likely we would support increasing units in low and medium density designations as well as high density designations if the infrastructure, traffic, capacity, water, sewer, all the city services could support that.
But if they added 5 high density, they could take away 5
low density.
We would allow that.
That's our current. All the specific plans have language that you can do that now.
Right.
Yeah, that's
what
not
I was
changing.
just asking. So that stays in
Yeah.
effect.
That's
It doesn't
not changing.
Okay, great.
We would likely see them develop those single families at the fullest potential, because that's,
Yeah.
that's lost revenue for them.
Right.
I wouldn't see that happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, they tend not to like to lose units. Yeah.
Over that again, because I was just trying to understand that if they had something that was medium density and on 10 acres, and it was less than one number and where it triggers another five units, would that, if they were medium density, could they keep their medium density and add those others as low density, or that doesn't work?
This only applies in high density.
No, well, so the specific plans allow unit transfers among the different parcels. So the different large lot parcels that have the different land uses. So you can transfer, and you'll see us bring specific plan amendments before council when they're transferring more than 20% of a large lot's units from one large lot to another. If it's below that, we can do that at the administrative level, either planning commission or sometimes even staff level. If it doesn't have any other entitlements. So they can still move units around. It's really when they want to increase the overall number of units that the specific plan accommodated. So for instance, with all the various developers in the Sierra Vista specific plan, there's a maximum unit count. And they've all tried to keep, to date, we haven't gone over that maximum number. But I can tell you, and you all know this because you've acted on dozens of these applications, they've transferred these units all the time among parcels. And so that's still allowed. And so some large lot parcels, you gain a few units, some you subtract. Sometimes we rezone from low density to medium density. Sometimes the way they're moving the units, we go from medium back to low. And it just all balances. So far, it's all balanced itself out.
But just to add on to that, one is not necessarily related to the other in terms of the unit count.
Yeah.
Whatever they submit an application for a specific plan amendment for, sometimes they're moving units all over the place. That is on its own track. And in addition to whatever it is they want to do, they also have to increase the density of any high-density property that they own, provided that they own high-density property. If they don't own any high-density property, we'll just process the specific plan amendment as we otherwise would or ordinarily would. There's no high-density property for them to bump units up on.
Okay, only if it's high-density property they have.
Correct.
That's
Everything
more
else
helpful.
remains the same. Yeah.
Thank you.
Does the council have any other questions before I open up public comment? Is there anyone here tonight that would like to address the council on this item? Okay. I'll close public comment and bring it back to council for either further deliberation or a motion.
I'll move.
Thank you. Is that it? City Council will consider adopting Resolution 22257, adopting the guidelines for specific plan amendments affecting or proposing residential land use policy. So I have a motion by Vice Mayor Haldeshelt.
So moved.
Thank you. And a second by Councilmember Alvord. With that, we'll start our roll call with Vice Mayor Haldeshelt.
Yes.
Councilmember Alvord.
Yes.
Councilmember Mendoza.
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci.
Yes.
And Mayor
Yes.
Bernasconi. Great, thank you.
Thank you all for answering our questions.
I think the biggest thing here is that this policy does not apply if the city has sufficient supply of lower income unit capacity. So you'll let us know.
Yep, correct, absolutely.
Thank you.
Our next item is 9.2, Villages at Sierra Vista Community Facilities District 1, Series 2022 bond issuance. Good evening, Dennis.
Good evening, Mayor Bernasconi and council members. My name is Dennis Kaufman, Assistant City Manager and Chief Financial Officer. With this agenda item, staff are recommending approval to issue the 2022 series of bonds for the Villages at Sierra Vista Community Facilities District Number 1. And just for a little background, the purpose of setting up a CFD is to create a land-secured financing tool to fund construction of authorized facilities or services. The Villages at Sierra Vista CFD number 1 was formed back in May of 2018. The recommended bond issue tonight would be the 4th bond issue for this CFD. The city has issued bonds for this district every summer for the past 3 summers in the dollar amounts that are on this slide. This 4th series of bonds has a not-to-exceed authorization amount of $4 million. And the maximum authorization of debt for this CFD is $310 million in total. The authorized facilities that could be financed with bonds from this CFD are listed on this slide and include transportation improvements, including Vista Grande Boulevard, Market Street, and Fitterment Road, as well as utility infrastructure and parks and open space improvements. And this map shows the Villages CFD with the original formation in gray on the right-hand side and the 3 subsequent annexations of land into this CFD. So the staff recommendation tonight is to approve a resolution authorizing the issuance of this 4th series of bonds for the Villages at Sierra Vista CFD number 1 and approving the related actions and documents, including the form of the preliminary official statement, which is the thick document that's used to market the bonds. And this concludes my presentation. I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does any of my colleagues have any questions of Dennis? Okay, I'll open up public comment. Is there anyone here tonight that would like to address the council on this item? Okay, close public comment. Any other further deliberations before we have a motion?
Move adoption of Resolution 22259.
With that, so tonight the City Council will consider adopting Resolution 22259, authorizing the issuance of special tax bonds for and on behalf of the City of Roseville Villages at Sierra Vista Community Facilities District Number 1, Public Facilities, approving and directing the execution of Supplemental Agreement Number 3 to Fiscal Agent Agreement, approving the form of preliminary official statement, approving sale of such bonds pursuant to a bond purchase agreement, and approving other related documents and actions. So I have a motion by Vice Mayor Haldeshelt. Can I get a second, please?
Second.
Thank you. Second by Councilmember Rakucci. With that, we'll start our roll call with Vice Mayor Haldeshelt.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Alvord.
Yes.
Thank you. Councilmember Mendoza.
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci.
Yes.
And Mayor Bernasconi.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion
Thank you,
passes
Dennis.
unanimously.
Okay, we'll move into item 10.1, the Talent Pipeline Management Program Professional Services Agreement and Budget Adjustment. We'll be hearing from our Economic Development Manager, Wayne Wiley, and our Economic Development Director, Melissa Anguiano. Good evening.
Good evening. And good evening, Mayor Bernasconi and members of the City Council. Melissa Anguiano, your city's Economic Development Manager or Director. I am joined here by Wayne Wiley, our city's Economic Development Manager, as well as Rana Godman, CEO of the Roseville Area Chamber. We are pleased to be here tonight to present a recommendation to Council for funding to support an innovative solution that works directly with employers to address their workforce needs. To begin, Wayne is going to provide an overview of workforce challenges and concerns, and Rana will follow with an overview of the Talent Pipeline Management Program, as well as an outline of Roseville's Talent Pipeline Management Initiative. Wayne?
Great. Well, thank you, Melissa, and good evening, Mayor Bernasconi, members of the council. Again, Wayne Wiley, Economic Development Manager. So with that, I'll just get into the presentation. And first, I would just like to take a moment to provide a little bit of background on why this initiative is so critical to our current economic development efforts. And so, as you're probably aware, workforce development has become increasingly important and is one of the greatest challenges facing employers today, and really affecting a broad range of industries. And just to provide a little bit of context on that point, as noted on this slide, in 2021, businesses added close to 4 million jobs to our economy. But at the same time, workforce participation declined, and actually to below pre-pandemic levels. And so with that, close to 3 million fewer Americans are working today as compared to in February 2020. Now, unfortunately, to further complicate this issue, there's also been rapid technology changes, shifts in the global economy, and demographic changes that have really impacted particularly middle-skilled jobs. Now, our region is well positioned for continued economic growth as outlined in our regional SEDS. However, having qualified and skilled workers will play a critical role in us reaching our future goals. Next slide. Now, with all that being said, it's important to note that it's vital that employer and industry-led partnerships address current skill gaps, namely by identifying cross-functional and fundamental workplace skills and creating the workforce pipeline for the future. So as proposed tonight, the Roseville Chamber is recommending the implementation of the Building Roseville Talent Pipeline initiative. And this is really intended to engage local employers and educators in actively building Roseville's talent pipeline and workforce. So with that, I'm going to now turn it over to our Roseville area CEO, Rana, for the next couple of slides. And after her presentation, we'll return back to staff for the closing remarks.
So much, Wayne and Melissa, for your due diligence and support. And Honorable Mayor Bernasconi and council members are delighted to be here tonight on behalf of the Roseville Area Chamber of Commerce. But before I begin with that, I'd like to pass those letters of support.
Thank you.
First, I'm going to begin by acknowledging retired Wendy Gehrig, who's watching us tonight in support of this initiative. I want to say thank you for your leadership for the past many years to ensure that our 501c3 organization is serving over 1,100 members in our community and has maintained a 5-star accreditation by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Our vision as the Roseville Area Chamber of Commerce is to advance the Roseville area to be the best region in California to live, work, and do business in. Our mission is to provide value to our members, promote and meet the need of the business and industry, and achieve community success through advocacy and leadership. In our strategic plan, our 4 main strategic priorities have been membership and community engagement, advocacy, economic development, and governance. Tonight, I'm here to present to you the Talent Pipeline Management Program. This initiative has been launched in 2015 by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. It is a demand-driven approach intended to really create consistent methods, bringing business, educators, and workforce partners together to address and sustain high-quality workforce needs. Next slide, please. And now we're going to watch just a brief video, if we're able to play it, about this program.
Today, businesses are seeking to build an increasingly skilled and diverse workforce. Meanwhile, more and more learners and workers are seeking employment and career advancement. While this may seem like a simple pairing, there's a problem. Many employers are still searching for a strategic and sustainable talent pipeline. Without it, their employment outcomes so often fall short of expectations. Talent Pipeline Management, or TPM, is a tool that can help. The TPM framework is a collection of 6 strategies that are based on industry best practices and provide employers with a data and performance-driven approach to identifying, developing, and sourcing talent. Utilizing supply chain management principles, these 6 strategies are ROI-driven, allowing employers to take the lead, building meaningful partnerships with educators and training providers, measuring their success, and creating employment and career advancement pathways for a skilled workforce. Learn how you can become part of this growing movement.
Thank you so much. TPM is an inclusionary workforce development initiative across sectors that supports building high-quality talent pipeline that foster economic growth by convening businesses into employer-led industry collaboratives, providing personalized talent solutions to ensure the workforce is trained, developed, and upskilled, and improving collaboration with education, government, and workforce partner, and that's why we're here tonight. This strategy, there are 6 strategies within this program, within that framework. Strategy 1 really begins by creating a collaborative that organizes employers by industry to identify the most promising opportunities for engagement around similar workforce needs. Strategy number 2 engages in demand planning and develops projections for job openings to determine with accuracy the type of talent and how much of it employers need. Strategy 2 will allow us to create a shared language to better communicate competency, credentials, and other hiring requirements of critical jobs in ways that allow employers to signal similarities and differences. Strategy 4 will identify where employers historically source their most qualified talent and analyze the capacity of those sources, as well as untapped talent sources to meet projected demand. Strategy 5 will allow us to build and manage the performance of talent supply chains to create a positive return on investment for all partners. And the last strategy would really be to engage in continuous improvement and plan for next steps and hopefully a second cohort of the program. There are many benefits to the TPM initiative. The main benefit is really that it becomes an employer-led workforce development initiative. We're very grateful for the work that our educators do, like Sierra College, William Jessup, Sac State. They do a great job in workforce development, but unfortunately our employers are often taking a advisory seat. This really puts the employer in a driver's seat to be able to identify what their needs are and better communicate to our educator what these needs are. Mm-hmm. So it becomes employer-led. It generates a lot of data that's actionable. Compared to the data that's available to us at the state level, actually allows us to look at the local differences and what our local market really needs. It provides a structured process for collective action and decision making, and it really focuses on employers' ROI. Next slide, please. This has been applied in many communities. A very successful case study is the one launched by the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, and it was a statewide initiative that was launched in 2018. They started with 20 employer collaboratives across the state, focused on building their talent pipeline for 60 critical jobs. They recently expanded that to 25 collaboratives. And they engaged over 200 industry leaders within these collaboratives. So they've been very successful. And it's been applied in many other communities as well. And Vermont is another one where over 100 employers have forecasted the addition of 5,500 new jobs across 11 critical job categories. Next slide. Now we'll focus on bringing this program to Roseville. It allows us to engage our local employers and educators in actively building our talent pipeline and utilizing TPM as a tool for economic growth. Through 5 industry-specific sectors, we're recommending healthcare, manufacturing, construction, hospitality, and tech. We'll launch the program by the end of July 2022. And the first cohort would train about 25 to 35 community leaders to identify the areas of greatest need. The implementation will be done in 4 stages, 4 phases. Phase 1 will be a needs assessment and stakeholders engagement. That will take about 6 months. And it will be to conduct focus groups to access the needs of the industry leaders, but to also select the cohort participant and who will be the greater beneficial of this program. And we'll also hire a full-time project manager for this project. Phase 2 will be the TPM Academy. That's the training itself. So that's where we will train 25 to 35 community leaders through 2 to 4 meetings over a 6 to 9 months period. And this phase will train employers on the 6 strategies. Phase 3 would be the staggered launch of the 5 industry-specific collaborative, and that's when we begin implementation of the program. And the last phase would be an evaluation phase and reporting and deciding on what next steps are based on funding for this initiative. Well, obviously, we'll not do that alone. We will do that in partnership with other stakeholders, key stakeholders like our businesses, our educators, our workforce board, most definitely our economic development team here at the city, but also hopefully at the county level, and our industry associations. So working with GSAC, North State, BIA, et cetera, really engaging the larger community to ensure that this program is successful. As I mentioned in the letter that was also provided to you tonight by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, I have recently completed the TPM training myself to gain a better understanding of this framework and ensure successful implementation of the program. So I'm very glad I graduated last month, and I look forward to really bringing that knowledge here to Roseville. And the last slide that I'll go over will be our budget. The budget for this initiative will be about $264,000 for 2 years. The first year, the bulk of the budget goes towards the training. Year 2, there will be no training cost. That will be implementation, and that cost will be carried on by the employers at that point, as well as the administrative costs and the full-time position that will be required. And with that being said, I want to say thank you for your time and consideration tonight, and I'll now turn it back over to Melissa.
Thank you, Rana. So tonight we have a recommendation before you to adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a professional service agreement between the City of Roseville and the Roseville Area Chamber of Commerce to implement a talent pipeline management workforce development program, and to adopt an ordinance authorizing a budget adjustment in the amount of $264,000 from the American Rescue Plan Act Revenue Loss Fund to cover costs associated with the implementation of the TPM Workforce Development Program. That concludes our presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Does the council have any questions of staff or Rana?
I do. Oh, I'm just trying to understand, and it probably goes to all of you. We've been working with like the colleges and businesses, trying to figure out what are some of the needs in our area, and I was trying to see how this is different. I saw that it was more, instead of educator-led, it was supposed to be business-led. Explain to me how this is going to be. It sounds good, but I wanted to show what we had and how does this make it better.
We actually invited President Willie Duncan from Sierra College while we were during the Cap-to-Cap meeting to a meeting with the U.S. Chamber Foundation so that he can also get educated on the program. And he provided a letter of support to say that these efforts will actually supplement what he's doing. It's not the same kind of work. This training provides a framework for the employers to learn how to gather their data. Currently, the employers answer questions, they sit in a meeting, but they don't take the initiative to really dive into their hiring process to look at where their talent is coming from. And it's much harder when you're sitting in a room with the employer telling him, well, we're not hiring from Sierra College, or we're not hiring from William Jessup. It gives them the confidentiality to be able to aggregate their data and then look at where they're really sourcing talent from. So it puts them in the driver's seat to be able to look at their data, look at what their needs are, and then provide it to our educators. It really supplements the work that the educators are doing, and it teaches the businesses how to dive deep into their data and collect the data that will be beneficial to our college.
So it might be colleges and it might be other training too, right?
Absolutely, vocational training, and it dives down to the middle school actually to start with career awareness from the middle school.
I think that's really good because I think there are a lot of students who are not really sure, and I like what the city's been doing about having them come, and especially with our utilities, and saying there are really high quality, high paid jobs, but you don't know it.
Right.
Thank you, Rana.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I do. Staff, Rana, would you say this requires a significant investment on behalf of the employers?
An investment of time, most definitely. They would have to be present, but they will have to continue the work beyond the training, so the implementation will be at the employer's cost, yes.
And would you say that the benefit is quicker retention, more satisfied employee, longer retention of the employees that are hired?
Longer
is that
retention,
one of the values of it?
Absolutely, but also upskilling. So giving the opportunity for current employees to grow into position within the organization, within their employers.
Yeah, so those were leading questions, of course, because I read, and I did have an opportunity on Cap to Cap to join President Duncan and Rana at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and heard that value and that benefit, so to that point.
Councilmember Albert, do you have a question?
Yeah, we had a presentation at the Placer County Economic Development Board that gave some examples, and so I want to make sure I'm repeating an example to see if this is what we're talking about. I'm pretty sure it is, but I think it would help everybody to understand. So I'm an employer, and I need employees. I'm going to be hiring 500 employees to help do things. And this will help me understand I need skill set A, B, and C for these employees. And I would be able to define this in detail. The universities would have the opportunity to say, you know, we've got programs that fit A and B, and we can develop one that gives you C, and it's a certification program. You can send your employees through that. So it basically helps me as an employer work with my community to give me the types of employees and skill sets that I need, and not just keep randomly trying to hire people hoping they've got the right skill set. But it's actually producing the talent that our employers actually need to fill those jobs. Is that what we're talking about, right?
That's correct.
So
And in some instances, it's actually creating the same candidate pools for the employers. So, for example, the 3 hospitals in the region could be hiring from the same candidate pools using the same job specs, the hiring processes.
Brilliant as far as building your economy. It's so great to have the colleges and universities in tune with what our employers need. And the example that he brought to the board was just eye-opening. It was so cool to see how quickly they were willing to adapt and create these certification programs or actual degrees to try to meet the requests of the employers out there. And it's fantastic for our region. So,
And it also helped creating a shared language. So sometimes among different employers within the same sectors, they're posting the same position, they're just using different verbiage for that position. It makes it really hard for the school system to identify a common ground. So by them getting together, creating the collaborative, they're creating common language of what the job needs are and then handing over that information to the schools. So the collaborative will bring the employers together to look at what those similarities and differences are in the credentials. There have been many instances that we found out that some credentials that the schools are offering are not needed for the job. So really aligning those needs is very helpful in terms of the talent pipeline.
Great way to attract new businesses to our region, to be able to tell them we have this to help you bring those employees in. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Any other comments of council before I open up public comment? No. Okay. I know we have 2 who have filled out a speaker card, and then I'll call these 2, and then if there's anyone else who wants to address the council, they can come forward. But Monique Brown, do you want to come forward? Good evening.
Good evening. Lift this up. It's not often that I have to lift the mic up. Okay. Good evening, Mayor Bernasconi and council members. I'm Monique Brown. I'm Managing Director of the Growth Factory, which is a nonprofit startup accelerator. We will be locating right across the street here shortly. And I just want to maybe just put an exclamation point on what Councilmember Alvar just said. One of the biggest requests that we get from the high growth startups that we're working with is for connections to talent. And it's what is going to fuel their growth, and their ability to attract that talent in this region will help them stay and grow here. And so I think it's a huge part, certainly, of the work that we're doing to have a program like this launching. And for the brand of our community, I think it's a tremendous asset. So I'm excited about the leadership that Rana is showing this area, and it's also a part of our Roseville Venture Lab kind of mandate is around kind of workforce and entrepreneurship. So this supports that as well. So just want to offer my support. Thank you
for your comment. Scott Powell, would you like to come forward? Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor, members of Council. My name is Scott Powell. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Greater Sacramento Economic Council. Hard to believe I was here 2 months ago talking to you guys about the Growth Factory and the partnership you formed. Really excited to come in and weigh in support Raina and the TPM program. I can't wait to see what I'm going to be coming here to talk about in September. So, but you guys are always doing some cutting edge stuff, and I know that goes to having a great staff and an entrepreneurial council like yourselves being willing to lead from the front. Workforce is the top thing, as Wayne alluded to. Every time we talk with a company or a consultant, it is how do we deliver talent? Whether they're looking to bring in 20 people or 2,000, talent is where that conversation begins, continues, and ends. And if you can't answer that, the conversation doesn't go very far. So having these type of programs are vitally important as we're looking to continue to grow and be competitive in the region. We run a regional business retention program. We met with over 100 companies this year. And we ask them, one of the leading questions we ask is, what is your biggest challenge? And keep in mind, this is the past fiscal year. We're still under lockdowns. There's wildfires, regulatory issues, supply chain bottlenecks. Over a third of them identify acquisition of talent and workforce without even being led there and considering everything else. So this is vitally important, not just from the national statistics Wayne brought, but what we're actually seeing here on the ground. So a program like this is vitally important. When the Roseville Chamber reached out and said, would GSEC be willing to help out? Didn't even ask, what do you need from us? The answer was absolutely yes. Count us in and let us know what we need to do. So I'm here today to say how important this is, how excited we are to see this program, and knowing that, that we can start addressing some of the talent issues right here in Roseville, and I urge you to support this program and looking forward to partnering. Thank you guys very much and have a great evening.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else here tonight that would like to speak to this item? Then come forward now. Okay, I'll close public comment, bring it back to the council for further deliberation or a motion.
I just had a quick comment. So, Melissa, Wayne, Rana, this is, where'd you go? There you go. This is an awesome idea. I just want to also suggest that we possibly reach out to some of our other, I know we kicked off Sierra College and we mentioned Jessup and some of the other ones, but we do have several private colleges that are much smaller. And I mention that only because in a past life, I was a department chair before I was an adjunct instructor. And one of the greatest challenges that we had with our graduates and even the students going through the various degree programs was the daunting task of pairing them with employers and getting syllabuses and course classes for those particular degrees to match up with what the real needs were out in the workforce, because the workforce is constantly changing, especially in areas like IT, criminal justice, healthcare, where every couple months there seems to be a new direction. Some dictated by public, some dictated by necessity and other items, but I know that we have other smaller, more specific degree-oriented colleges, and even Hillsdale, I think, at some point. I think that we should make sure that we put those on the list, and then we also, kind of tap into those, because these are usually working families, that are doing night school, and they're much more. I don't want to say that other people in other colleges aren't eager, but these are eager people to climb up within the workforce, and they usually have a combination of skill sets and education, where some people have not gone out to the workforce yet. So I think that would be a good idea for us to look at that. But I love the key partnerships. I think this is just an awesome idea, and even if it was double the amount, I would support it. I think this is just a great idea. But I just wanted to throw that idea out there, that look in some of the smaller colleges too. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments. I just wanted to add, too, that the new CEO of our Roseville Area Chamber, I feel like, is the newest member to our community, and I just want to acknowledge you for bringing this forward. I think probably one of our first meetings, you were really passionate about this, and it takes a long time usually for things to happen, and you rallied the troops on this one. So I just want to commend you for doing that. Tale as old as time is, it's a hard part about running a business is the people and the people of business. So thank you for that. If there's no other comment, we'll have a motion.
So at this time, the City Council will consider adopting Resolution 22-264, approving a professional services agreement by and between the City of Roseville and the Roseville Area Chamber of Commerce, and authorizing the city manager to execute it on behalf of the City of Roseville, and adopting ordinance number 6531, authorizing certain amendments to the fiscal year 2022-23 budget, and declaring this ordinance to be immediately effective as an appropriation measure. With that, if I can get a motion to adopt?
Second.
Thank you. I have a motion by Councilmember Alvord with a second by Councilmember Mendoza. With that, we'll start our roll call with Vice Mayor Helderschelt.
Yes.
Councilmember Alvord.
Yes.
Councilmember Mendoza.
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci.
Yes.
And Mayor Bernasconi.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes
Thank you.
unanimously.
Thank you all for being here tonight, too, to speak to this item. Okay, we'll move into item 11.1, the council discretionary funds request, Roseville Crime Stoppers. And our city clerk has this.
Sure, thank you very much. So the City Council at this time will consider a request that came to you tonight for $2,000 from the council discretionary funds for the Roseville Crime Stoppers for the annual 4th of July fun run that's held in downtown Roseville each year during the city's parade. And so much of the funding is utilized to support Roseville scholarships for youth pursuing careers in public safety, community education, and other areas that they believe to be important.
Okay, are there any comments from staff about this?
I just had a question. So if we were to approve the 2,000 after it, there would still remain 28,509 in the discretionary fund account? Is that
Yes, that's correct.
Thanks.
Any other questions before I open up to public comment?
How did the fun run go?
I'll open up to public comment. How about that?
Did it go? I did go.
So is there anyone here tonight that would like to speak to this item? Now is time to come forward.
Good evening, Mayor Bernasconi and City Council. The fun run did go off.
Okay, good.
We grew the run by about 20% of last year, so we're still in a little bit of recovery after COVID and not having it. But no, we had about 225 runners. They went through downtown. They went out on the trail a little bit. So I think everybody had a good time. It was a little early because we have to be done before the parade. But yeah, great event, and I think it brought a lot of people, to the downtown, and they got good parking in a good spot right before the parade, and I think a lot of people, hung around. We were lucky enough to have SWAT come out and some officers, and we do a kids quarter mile. I'm not sure if you guys are aware of that, but little kids get to run with the police officers and SWAT, and they really enjoy that part of it as well. They got all their gear on, and the SWAT vehicles out there for them to check out. So I think it forms a really good partnership between us and our police department. Crime Stoppers, the money that from the run and from the runners, it's one of our biggest fundraisers. That money goes towards supporting our anonymous tip line so people can call in anonymously. It also funds our tip software. So people that maybe wouldn't normally be involved or want to get involved because their name goes on a report, they can go to the software and report something anonymously, and it goes to, the folks at the police department. So, and then, kind of over our 25 years plus existence, we've given scholarship money out to local high school students that want to look at a career in criminal justice or law enforcement, and attend community events, passing out information and stuff that the police department gives to us to kind of help things be a little bit safer around here. So I appreciate your guys' support as you have done in the past, and if you have any questions, let me know.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right.
Is there anyone else here tonight that would like to speak to this item? Okay, I'll close public comment. Any comments from the council? I'll just say that we love to be able to support causes for the city of Roseville, and knowing that you are all volunteers. I also want to acknowledge you, Ann, for being a volunteer for many years for this. I would have liked for us to be able to have approved this earlier than after the event. So I would just say if you want to come forward, our doors open all the time. So if you wanted to put something in earlier, March, April, knowing that it's coming, because then I think the city would have the benefit of being named as a sponsor too. So just kind of putting that, I know you're all busy doing your daytime job. So does anyone else have anything to add before we consider this?
Good stuff.
Okay. Do you want to come forward to the podium?
Yes. I just want to say, we do put you as a sponsor because the city helps us put the run on with street closures and laying out the route and stuff for us. So we do recognize the city and understand that there's a partnership there as well. So I just want to let you know. But yes, but I do recognize, yes, I do recognize that we do need to get to you ahead of time. All right, thanks.
All right, thank you. Thanks for what you do. Okay, I think we're ready for a motion.
At this time, the City Council will consider adopting the motion to support the $2,000 grant to council from the council discretionary funds for the Roseville Crime Stoppers.
So moved.
Second.
Yeah, I have a motion on the floor by Vice Mayor Heldeshelt with a second by Councilmember Rakucci. With that, we'll start a roll call. Vice Mayor Heldeshelt?
Yes.
Councilmember Alvord?
Yes.
Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
And Councilmember Rakucci? Mayor Bernasconi.
Yes, thank you very much, and thank you for being here. Okay, we have 3 public hearings in front of us tonight. I will open the first public hearing. It's for item 12.1, the Creekview Community Facilities District Number 1, Public Facilities Annexation of Territory, and we have our Assistant City Manager, Chief Finance Officer Dennis Kaufman back.
Thank you very much, Mayor Bernasconi and City Council. This item is a public hearing. This is the final step in the process to annex land into the city's Creekview Community Facilities District Number 1. It also establishes a new improvement area within that district and approves a rate and method of apportionment for the special tax within this new improvement area. Creekview CFD number 1 was formed back in November of 2019, and at that time, future annexation area was identified and established in the district. And then back in June of this year, the City Council approved a resolution of intent to annex this territory into the district. And this constitutes Phase 3 and Phase 4 of the Creekview development, which includes 561 single-family residential units and 168 high-density residential units. And the next bond issuance for the Creekview CFD is planned for late fall of this year based on this annexation. This map shows the annexation area, which is in the dark dashed area on the north side of Pleasant Grove Creek, and again includes Phase 3 and Phase 4 of the development. The initial boundary of the district was the area south of the creek. And then there's also a Phase 5 planned in the future for another possible annexation into the district, and that would be at the northwest at the top left of that map. So the staff recommendation tonight is to approve the annexation by adopting a resolution, establishing an improvement area, and approving a rate and method of apportionment for the special taxes within the district. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the council have any questions of Dennis? No? Okay, I'll open it up to public comment. Is there anyone here tonight that would like to speak to this item? Okay, I'll close public comment. Close the public hearing, and I understand our clerk has the ballot results.
I don't think I have those, actually.
Is that right?
I don't think I have that.
My understanding was that they came in this week.
Okay, I don't think I have those here with me. Oh, thank you very much, Mayor. So the number of eligible, ballots, the number of votes eligible were 167. The number of yes votes was 167. There were no votes in opposition, so the ballot proceedings passed unanimously. So with that, do you want me to do this? Okay.
So we need a motion, right?
Yeah. So with that tonight, the City Council will consider adopting Resolution Number 22261, a resolution establishing an improvement area and approving a rate and method of appointment of special taxes within the City of Roseville, Creekview Community Facilities District Number 1 Public Facilities.
So moved. Second.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor by Vice Mayor Haldeshelt with a second by Councilmember Mendoza. With that, we'll start our roll call with Vice Mayor Haldeshelt.
Yes.
Councilmember Alvord.
Yes.
Councilmember Mendoza.
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously 5-0.
Thank you. We have another public hearing for item 12.2. I'll open the public hearing. This is for the West Roseville Specific Plan Parcel W60B, the specific plan amendment. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Bernasconi, members of the City Council, Greg Bitter, Planning Manager. I'm here tonight with Derek Ogden, our Senior Planner, and Kenny Shallow, our Associate Planner. And Kenny is going to be providing you with a presentation for the specific plan amendment.
Good evening, Mayor Bernasconi and council members. I'm here to present an amendment to the West Roseville specific plan. The project site is located on a 10-acre portion of parcel W60B in the West Roseville specific plan. The site is zoned light industrial with a special area overlay, or M1SA, and has the land use designation of light industrial. Surrounding uses include the future city sports complex to the north, a vacant general industrial parcel to the east, Curry Creek open space to the south, and low-density residential uses to the west across Westbrook Boulevard. Also, the Pleasant Grove wastewater treatment plant is located to the northeast of the site. A specific plan amendment is requested to facilitate the development of a self-storage and RV storage project with an on-site caretaker's unit. The zoning ordinance principally permits the storage uses, but requires an administrative permit for the caretaker unit. However, the SA overlay in the specific plan prohibits caretaker employee housing in the M1 zone. This was a result of the 1996 EIR for the Pleasant Grove wastewater treatment plant, which required that residential uses be located at least 1,000 feet away to avoid any significant noise or odor impacts. But later in 2013, an updated study was prepared as part of the West Park Phase 4 project, which reduced this buffer area to 769 feet. So given the proposed unit is outside of this buffer area, the applicant is requesting to amend the specific plan to allow a caretaker's unit in the M1 SA zone with approval of an administrative permit consistent with the zoning ordinance. And parcel W60B is the only M1 zone parcel in West Roseville, so no other parcels will be affected by this change. And for reference, this is the approved site plan. The caretaker's unit is located outside of the buffer area, so there won't be any significant impacts. Early notification of the project was posted to the Arcona website, and the public hearing notice was mailed to a 300-foot radius, published in the Press Tribune and on the Arcona website. No public comments were received. And consistent with CEQA, an initial study leading to a negative declaration was prepared, and no comments were received during the public review period of the document. The project was heard by the Planning Commission on May 12th of this year, and no public testimony was received. The Planning Commission adopted the initial study negative declaration and approved the design review permit. An administrative permit to allow the caretaker's unit was also approved, but is dependent upon the specific plan amendments before you tonight, which the Planning Commission recommended City Council approve. In conclusion, the Planning Commission found the project is consistent with the goals, policies, and standards of the Zoning Ordinance General Plan and the West Roseville Specific Plan, and the Planning Commission recommends City Council consider the initial study negative declaration and adopt a resolution approving the specific plan amendment. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for any questions.
Very much. Does the council have any questions of Kenny or staff? Councilman Bradford?
How many homes were within the 300-foot radius that got mailed to?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I believe there's along Westbrook Boulevard across the to the west.
So there were homes that got mailed
yes.
to?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Those are the homes I'm most worried about, those that back up.
Yeah, and I believe there's some homes across from Curry Creek to the south.
South, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, yeah, Mayor, I just, going back to earlier this evening, agenda item 9.1, the housing element implementation. You mentioned specific plan amendment, but this doesn't apply
Correct.
to this, right? This is in a specific plan amendment to industrial,
Changing,
right? Not, okay.
Not a land use change.
I just want to make sure.
Thank you. Applied before you adopted the policy tonight.
Perfect.
Any other questions of staff?
And the storage unit is consistent for that land use, correct? So all we're looking at is the caretakers.
Exactly, yeah, that's all we're changing for tonight.
Okay.
I do have one more question. I apologize. The purpose of the caretaker home, by adding it to the property, that would provide a greater level of security for this. Is that correct?
Correct.
And without it, we wouldn't have any on-site security necessarily human. Okay, so it's an advantage to the property and.
That's correct, and the applicant has constructed several self-storage facilities within the city and within the region, and their security method is to have on-site security, and so this was something very important to them, and I think it's just as we analyze this and we realized that that buffer area had been reduced several years ago, it just made sense to have that on-site caretaker.
There's a storage facility to the east of this. It was out of the picture there. I think it was developed by the same developer.
Yeah,
and they have a home also.
Yes, they do.
Did we approve that? Because that was near the treatment plant too. I don't remember that.
That was outside of the well.
It was right next to it. We put you on the spot.
Yes, we did approve it. I think that's one reason that we realized that when we took that item to Planning Commission. Now, I think Derek and I'm getting this wrong. I think we did have the planning allow that to go through without amending the specific plan.
Are we aware of any security issues over at that site?
I don't believe so. We haven't been made aware of any.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Okay. If there are no other questions of staff, I'll open it up to public comment. Is there anyone here tonight that would like to speak to this item? Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Cole Heron, part of the applicant team. First, I'd like to thank Kenny and planning staff for their preparation in this. And my team are available for any questions you may have this evening.
Thank you very much. Okay, anyone else? All right, I'll close public comment, close the public hearing. Ask our clerk to read the motion.
Thank you very much. So at this time, the City Council will consider adopting Resolution Number 22249, amending the West Roseville Specific Plan, and consider the Westbrook Storage Initial Study Negative Declaration. With that, may I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by Councilmember Albert with a second by Councilmember Rakucci. We'll start roll call with Vice Mayor Haldeshelt.
Yes.
Councilmember Albert.
Yes.
Councilmember Mendoza.
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci.
Yes.
And Mayor Bernasconi.
Yes.
Great,
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, and we have our last public hearing. It's item 12.3, the zoning ordinance update. I'll open the public hearing, and we will hear from our staff.
Good evening again, Mayor Bernasconi, members of the City Council. Tonight, Greg Bitter, Planning Manager, again. This item tonight is a zoning ordinance update. It's a fairly routine item. We bring zoning ordinance updates before the council probably every 18 months or so. As we go along, we identify little minor things in the zoning ordinance that implementation-wise we've determined that need to be fixed. You are well aware that the state continues to pass legislation requiring us to keep our ordinances up to date. We have a hard enough time keeping up with that, so this ordinance amendment will include quite a bit of that language to maintain our compatibility or compliance with state laws. So Derek Ogden is with me again, and I would like to introduce Scarlett Marr. She is an associate planner. She's been here a little over 10 months now. This is her first presentation before the Planning Commission. City Council. I was going to say she's made several presentations before the Planning Commission, so this is her first City Council presentation. Right. And I encourage you to ask complex questions.
Okay. No problem.
I know the Vice Mayor is ready for that.
Multi-part questions, right?
Yes, please. So I'll turn it over to Scarlett.
Thank you,
Welcome. Thank you, everyone. Well, good evening, Mayor Bernasconi and council members. I'm here this evening to present to you the zoning ordinance updates. So for the purposes of my presentation, I'll be splitting the presentation in 3 sections, with the first being any changes to the zoning ordinance initiated by staff. Some of these changes would add clarity and help resolve any discrepancies in the code. The first one being changing the loading area. We're clarifying that not all projects required a loading area. This was a result of the Fitment Plaza project, which the council heard back in 2019. Other amendments are related to allowing multifamily housing in the NCNCC zoning districts with an administrative permit. This change would allow nonprofit organizations like churches to build housing on their property. And other changes resulting like the fast food restaurant parking consistency as well as the veterinary hospital definition are proposed to be updated. And changes to the design review for residential subdivision, which would allow existing properties to have a single-family home with the medium-density residential land use to add a new home without having to apply for an entitlement application, but still require a building permit application. And this would be typical for properties in the infill area. Slide, please. Other changes, for example, related to the patio cover rear yard setback for new home construction and clarifying the office use parking requirement based on the building square footage is also proposed. An update to the entitlement extension to allow the planning manager to grant a larger period than 1 year is also proposed. This is a result of, obviously, as we know, the economic uncertainty, which would allow the planning manager to extend or be more flexible with the time frame for entitlement applications. And lastly, we do propose to add the Tower Theater to the list of significant buildings in the city. A second portion of the zoning ordinance modifications are related to legislative changes. These amendments would not substantially change the content of the zoning ordinance, but rather bring it into compliance with state law. Some of the legislation have been enacted in the past year, so we're just bringing our zoning ordinance into compliance or up to code with state law. So some of these changes are related to, for example, residential density bonus law, which we would have one incentive or concession for projects that include low-income housing for students. We're also clarifying that any disapproval findings for housing development would only apply to affordable housing and emergency shelters, and we are proposing to add a new section which outlines the list of required findings for disapproving a housing project or development project which does meet the city development standards. And we also propose to remove the parking requirement for emergency shelters to be consistent with Assembly Bill 139. In addition, we also propose to update the permitted use table to allow transitional and supportive housing in zones where multifamily housing or mixed uses are permitted. Examples of the zoning districts are R3 as well as residential mixed use or commercial mixed use zoning districts. And by definition, transitional and supportive housing is defined as a place where assistance is provided for individuals between the ages of 18 and 24 who are transitioning into housing. The next section we propose to update is consistent with Assembly Bill 101, but before I begin that section, I'll let Greg chime in regarding the memo you received.
Yes, this section of the ordinance, you have a memo regarding low barrier navigation centers before you, and I want to make sure I clarify. We're going to ask the council to make two corrections to the ordinance that's in your packet, and the memo has the two change pages as attachment A and attachment B in the memo. I think it's important to understand that these low barrier navigation centers is a new housing type required by state law. It really is transitional housing for homeless or people close to homelessness, and there are several requirements to meet the definition. And the new chapter 19.47 of the municipal code will include the location requirements and standards that these low barrier navigation centers have to meet. So they do have to have coordinated entry system. They have to be staffed. They have to actively provide services that help people transition from homelessness to permanent housing. They're low barrier in terms that it's easy to enter. You can have pets. You can have a partner, unless it's designated. Obviously, if it's a women's shelter, men won't be allowed. But so you can have partners. You can bring your belongings along. So there's quite a few criteria that the legislation included in this definition. The one thing that we talk about when we bring items in the zoning ordinance updates that we're implementing new state laws, we try to implement the minimum requirements of the new state laws. We are typically don't broaden out those requirements. So one of the changes that's in the memo is as we were reviewing the ordinance for the umpteenth time, we noticed that we were allowing these low barrier navigation centers in the R3 zone, the multifamily zone. Well, again, reviewing the law, that is not a requirement of the law. It's mixed use and commercial zones where housing is allowed. So we want to make sure that as you're acting tonight, we want to remove that from the ordinance. We do not want to allow low barrier navigation centers in the multifamily R3 zone. So that's one of the requested changes tonight. The second is really minor in nature, and that's in the definition of low barrier navigation center at the beginning of the code. It provides the definition, but it doesn't provide a reference to Chapter 19.47, which most of the definitions, if there's subsequent standards and regulations in the code, the definitions will point you in that direction. So we're adding that language as well. I just want to make sure we point that out, that as you take action with this new definition, we are going to make these changes, and we are complying with the minimum requirements of state law. Now I'll let Scarlett go back to the program.
Thank you. So it's Greg mentioned the low barrier navigation centers will be used by right in areas where mixed use are permitted and multifamily. This could be in residential mixed use or commercial mixed use zoning districts. And by definition, a low barrier navigation center offers housing to anyone who is homeless or at risk of homelessness, and it provides them a temporary location to live in while they wait to move into permanent housing. Other changes that we propose, changes like the small long-term care facility, which serves 6 or fewer individuals, would be allowed by right in residential zones. Updates to our wireless telecommunications facility code, which would comply with the new changes to the Federal Communications Commission shot clock rulings. And lastly, we do propose to remove the administrative permit requirement as well as the business license fee requirement for large family daycare homes in the city as required by state law. So the last portion of the zoning ordinance amendments is related to the housing element program, specifically Program 28 and 31. Program 28, we propose to change the approval process for large community care facilities from a use permit to an administrative permit in all residential zones. And Housing Element Program 31, for employee housing for 6 or fewer people, would be permitted as a use by right in all residential zoning districts. So the zoning ordinance public notification was posted on the Roseville Coalition Neighborhood Association website, and to date, we have not received any comments. The zoning ordinance updates are policy and procedure making activities, and because the project will not have a significant effect on the environment, the project is actually not subject to CEQA. And the project was heard by the Planning Commission on May 12th, where no public testimony was received. At the conclusion of the public hearing, the Planning Commission did recommend the City Council adopt the 2 findings of fact and approve the ordinance amendment to Title 19 of the Roseville Municipal Code. Based on staff's recommendation and the Planning Commission, we recommend the City Council adopt the 2 findings of fact and introduce for the first reading an ordinance approving the amendments to Title 19 of the Roseville Municipal Code. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does the council have questions of staff?
I have a couple. Just define, I see with the Tower Theater is going to be considered a significant building. What does that mean? I think it's a significant building, but I don't know what the definition means.
So our zoning ordinance does list several different, older, more historic buildings in that section of our zoning ordinance. And by definition, you can't remove or demolish those buildings without a design review permit. So this would add the Tower Theater to that list of significant buildings as designated by the council. And so that it would ensure some protection that you couldn't just demolish that building.
Do we have very many buildings under significant buildings?
I think there's maybe 10 or 15.
There's about 15 buildings listed. West House, Barker Hotel. I think the last time we amended this, we added the Victorian Mansion and brick structures at the Caseburg House out at Diamond K. And I think the reason we're bringing this item tonight is that, the Tower Theater historically has been owned by the city, and any action regarding the Tower Theater would be coming before the city council for the city council's consideration in a public forum. Now, with the sale of the Tower Theater and it being an important structure, a significant building for the city and private ownership, we want to make sure it has the same process that all of the other significant buildings in the city have.
Oh, that sounds good. Is the old Bank of America building in it? It used to be Bank of Italy?
Yes, it's on here.
Yes.
Okay, that's great. That was the one question. And my other one, how about low barrier navigation centers? You mentioned, that they can have pets and, different things. How about alcohol and drugs? Do you have to pass a drug test to go in, or no drug test, or is that even part of it? Or
specific. Yeah, I do not believe. I think it is up to the individual operator whether or not they require that. I think that is part of the low barrier.
Yeah, that's what I was.
Definition is that if the operator does not require drug and alcohol testing, then we can't require drug and alcohol testing.
But they have to comply as a regular resident. I mean, if they were causing really problems, they could call the police or.
Oh, sure, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All the public safety laws apply to everybody, yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah. This is a Scarlett question. With large family daycare homes versus small family daycare homes, how many kids do they allow in those?
So the small family daycare would allow up to 8 individuals, and the large goes up to 14 kids.
So we allow that without any kind of permit. It's just an administrative permit at the counter.
It used to be an administrative permit through us, but now state law has said that you can't require those type of permits. So.
And no business license, which I'm surprised too. They don't have a business license for.
That's right. They're really trying to streamline the process.
Wow. Okay.
And they are licensed through community care at the state, so that it's their state licensing governs. Yeah,
so there is a license.
There is a license. Oh yeah, there's absolutely a licensing and inspection program at the state level.
Okay.
Okay. I'll open this up.
Sorry.
Okay.
Had my head down.
Let's go for it.
All right. So the low barrier navigation, only mixed use. Is that what I'm reading? By right, in mixed use in non-residential zones, permitting multifamily uses.
Commercial mixed use, in commercial zones allowing residential and the mixed use. So it's commercial mixed use and residential mixed use.
Yeah. Well, all right. Yeah.
Oh, and one thing.
The state. This is just. I got to go in the soapbox, right? I mean, sure. This is a lot of this stuff is one size fits all.
Correct.
And unfunded mandates that come down and impact the quality of life in our community by making it challenging for parking, whether it's daycare or other multifamily. Okay.
One thing I would like to mention on that is there is a clause that unless the legislature extends it, there is a sunset January 1st, 2027 on the low barrier navigation.
I'm sorry, Mayor. I do, and to follow up on Councilwoman Rakuchi's question on the significant, and I see the list on page 84. Mm-hmm. But I just want clarification. Significant is not historical. Is or is not historical?
No.
The definition. Because on your list you have one building, and the only building that I know in the city that's on the National Historic Register.
Right. So these aren't necessarily designated as a historic building. These are obviously identified by the city as significant to us.
Right.
And so there is a definition here, and I guess we could just read it. Mike would like us to. It means a building which has special historic, cultural, or aesthetic interest and which has been listed under Section 19.61 of the zoning ordinance. So it can be characterized by one or more of the following: a building of at least 50 years old, a building listed on the National Register, or a building determined by City Council to be notably associated with one or more historic persons or events, or with the broad architectural, cultural, political, economic, or social history of Roseville. So it's more of a broad term than a historic designation.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I'll open it to public comment. Is there anyone here tonight that would like to speak to this item? You can come forward now. Okay, I'll close public comment, close public hearing, bring it back to staff for any further deliberation.
Ready for the motion? Thank you. At this time, the City Council will consider adopting the two findings of fact and introducing the first reading, an ordinance of the Council of the City of Roseville, amending zoning ordinance chapters 19.08, 19.10, 19.12, 19.22, 19.26, 19.28, 19.34, 19.38, 19.46, 19.52, 19.61, 19.76, and 1978, as well as adding chapters 19.47 of Title 19 of the Roseville Municipal Code.
So moved.
I'm sorry, subject, and this is all subject to changes recommended by staff as presented tonight.
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor by Vice Mayor Heldeshelt with a second by Councilmember Elvert. With that, we'll start a roll call with Vice Mayor Heldeshelt.
Yes.
Councilmember Elvert. Yes. Councilmember Mendoza. Yes. Councilmember Rakucci.
Yes.
And Mayor Bernasconi.
Yes.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, and thank you for your first presentation. Did you say it's Escarlet or Escarlette?
Scarlett, the second.
Okay. Great, nice to meet you.
And she will be back next month.
Ready. Okay, we'll do one last public comment. Is there anyone here tonight that would like to make a comment on any item that wasn't on the agenda this evening? You can come forward now. Okay, I'll close public comment and bring it back to staff and council for final comments. Do our staff have anything they'd like to report out tonight?
No further reports, Mayor.
Okay, nice job tonight, Joe.
Thank you.
All right, Councilmember Rakucci, you want to kick us off?
Oh, yeah, just a couple of things. Today I had my NACWA meeting, the Northern California Water Association meeting, and that's with several of our Northern California partners, and many of them are rural and have farms. But one thing we all have in common is how we use our water and the need of water. And what they did this time today, they had films that they showed us that really explain what their area is about. And so it's really interesting to see how they're doing presentations, and that was quite interesting. And some of their areas are several generations old and went from in the beginning when it was only rice field or mud paddies, and when they got permission by the not state of California but federal legislation that allowed them to come and have the land, and it was just muddy areas to make it into the farms that they had been. But that was it's a very good meeting because they always keeps us looking what's all happening all over California. And tomorrow, Vice Mayor Halderstelt be on Regional Water Authority. I'm the alternate, and I'll watch on too. That's pretty good. And I think all of us were two things we all did. We the 4th of July parade. I want to thank all the people for coming out there. I think maybe it's half the runners that you had in the Crime Stoppers. You're probably right. I did see some with numbers, so I did see that. But they were just happy. They were all dressed in festive 4th of July outfits, and even the dogs, the little kids. And, it just makes us feel all the freedoms that we have, and, not for us to take it lightly, that we are just fortunate, and we just got to guard and keep our guard up to keep it going. And I went yesterday to the next day here in downtown Roseville. We had Tuesday night, but they regular Tuesday night, but they also did nonprofits, and so they had a lot of the nonprofits out there, and you could see what they were doing. Only bad thing, the wind came up, and a lot of the tents were going flying away, so that was kind of not good. But it really showed you of all these people and organizations and all the cool things that how they help Roseville and how they help people and make our community what it is. So it's kind of fun being out there and seeing that. That's it.
Thank you.
Just a few updates, Mayor. The Roseville Police Athletics League met yesterday afternoon, and just want to put out there to mark your calendars on October 8th from 5 to 9 right here on Vernon Town Square. RPAL is bringing back Bacon and Brewfest. Sponsorship letters and information will be hitting the website in the next week or week and a half. On the RPAL website, and there's several sponsorship levels available, and then general admission tickets are available, as have been in the past, online. They always sell out quick, so I would encourage you to get your tickets early. Lots of beer vendors and food vendors, as usual, are coming out again this year, so it proves to be quite an event, and it does sponsor a lot of good events that RPAL supports for our community and for our youth within the city of Roseville. Also, this coming Sunday, the Music in the Park is going to be at Royer Park. They're going to have the Delta Wires, which is a California Blues Hall of Fame group. It starts at 6, goes till 8. And again, bring your chairs, plenty of food out there, food vendors and whatnot. So encourage you to go out there and support Music in the Park with your support and your money donations. And then just one last update, a week from this Saturday, out here on Vernon Town Square again, they'll have the concerts on the square, and they're going to have the Pat Benatar tribute band Invincible, and that starts at 7:30 and goes till 9. And then just I want to piggyback on what Councilwoman Rakucci said. I want to thank everybody for coming out on the 4th, but I also want to send a special thanks out to all of our city staff that work so hard, from the street crews all the way down to the people who helped with the parade route. Your efforts didn't go unnoticed. We appreciate all you do behind the scenes, and I want to thank you for always making this an amazing event, and thank you for doing all you do for the run as well. So that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Vice Mayor Haddishop?
Very briefly, a lot of the committees that were assigned to don't meet in July. Some of them do, but that doesn't mean the work doesn't continue on. There were a number of significant things happened in June, both at Transportation and at SACOG, that will come back in August. So we'll remain vigilant on those things, and that's it.
Thank you. Councilmember Alvord?
I had a South Placer Wastewater Authority meeting this last term, and I just was going to give a report. There's some neat things happening out on the west side of town at our wastewater treatment plant. They've put in 2 big digesters, and unfortunately there's some delays, everything from supply chain to a fire that took place and some project management turnover. But the nice thing about it is once they're finally done with this next year, we'll be getting rid of the odor on the west side of town, which is fantastic. And they're actually converting that into natural gas and using it to fuel our trucks. And so the concept and what they're doing is just pretty cool. I'm really excited about that. I know the neighbors are going to be jazzed when that finally is all done. And I was going to add about downtown Tuesday nights. It's every Tuesday night through the rest of July. And I've been going to this for years, and I got to say the vendor booths have upgraded quite a bit. There's not as many service vendors and a lot more crafty home, good quality stuff to purchase and to look at, and I was pretty excited. It was pretty neat. I think it's been upgraded quite a bit. The bands have been fantastic. So 5:30 to 9 every Tuesday through the month of July. I hope to see you out there. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comments. A couple things to add real quickly. Councilmember Mendonça mentioned October 8th Bacon and Brew, which is really fun. I want to make sure we mark our calendars for October 19th at Blue Oaks Bayside for the Placer Valley event that we will probably all be at, a collaboration of our region's chambers for a business one-day summit with trade booths and hearing from leaders in our community. I had an opportunity actually this evening, right before the meeting, to tour, I guess it's the official name, the Legacy Building. Has it been named that? Or, okay, some unofficial name. But Roseville Electric's building across the street that was purchased a few years back, that's now a customer-facing first floor, which is really amazing what they've done with the space. So I just want to thank Aaron Fry, who walked me through that this afternoon. And then many of us do many things outside of our council meetings and our committee, and one of those things I will be at tomorrow night is speaking to an active senior group at the club in west part of Roseville. They have an interest in what's happening just all around the city with related development and some of our city initiatives. So I'll be out there tomorrow night for a little bit. If there's nothing else to add, we got through a lot tonight. I would like to adjourn the meeting and let you all know that we'll be meeting back here again in 2 weeks on July 20th. And I hope you all have a great rest of your evening, and thank you for being here. Good night.